Hey everyone, welcome to all of you joining our live Tagboard webinar, Best Practices in Interactive Programming. Wouldn't be interactive if we didn't, for those of you tuning in on Twitter, maybe you're tuning in on YouTube, drop us a comment, drop us a note, tell us who you are, where you're watching from. Start it off by being interactive, right? I'm Christine Chalk. I am the VP of Professional and Creative Services at Tagboard. Have the joy of working with a number of our media and entertainment and sports and brand clients who are bringing amazing interactive activations to life. Fact of the matter, I'm probably the most boring person who's on this call today, which anyone would be when you're sitting next to this guy.
And that is me, Sky Muller, the non-boring one of the group here. And I am the Senior Client Success Manager. No, two not boring people. We'll bring in a third not boring person here in a second. But Client Success Manager at Tagboard, working with our media, entertainment, sports partners, all about interactive programming. And that's why we're here today, talking about interactive programming. And the reason we're talking about interactive programming is because we know it's what you want to hear about. It's the number one question that we've received over the last 6-7 months is how do we engage our fans, our audience, viewers, students, whoever they may be, when they're not in the building, when they're not in the arena or the stadium. And it's been really fun to watch our media, sports, brands, entertainment partners, higher education, whoever it may be, around the country, around the globe over the last several months, adapt and pivot in tremendous ways. It's just been really inspiring to watch. And so today we want to dive into one of those instances. We know that people have been producing great content inside and outside of bubbles or campuses, whatever you want to call it in the sports world. And so we're going to dive into the Premier Lacrosse League bubble today. More on that in a second. But as Christine mentioned off the top, it's interactive programming. It's an interactive webinar. We want you to chime in the chat, ask questions, anything you have. We'll try and get to as many as we can later in the programming. We want this to be interactive, so make sure you chime in the chat.
Before we dive into Premier Lacrosse League, want to get everyone's creative wheels spinning out there. Flash through a few different examples of things we've seen in the last few days, in the last few weeks, to kind of get the creativity sparked here right off the top. First off, we'd be remiss if we didn't start with the league that's kicking off today. We've got the NFL. One example here coming from the Ravens training camp. They took it interactive, took it to Twitter, and asked their viewers, what position do you want us to cover today? Who do you want us to talk about in our live stream? And paid it off in their live stream. Great example here. Going back a few days ago to the NHL, during conference finals, we've seen an amazing activation where they are taking the competition off the ice and into the fan base. A hashtag battle, asking fans of each team to really digitally cheer for their favorite team, but then giving the players the payoff too, right? They gave whoever won the hashtag battle on Twitter a digital chant in the arena. You can see in the video here that full arena screen takeover. So the players on the ice got to hear and see the fans virtually cheering, even if it's from their couch or their guest bedroom or their living room. Taking it a little bit more virtual, a few weeks ago with the MLS, they used virtual jumbotrons to bring fans into the experience and to highlight some of the diehards on this billboard that could even be seen on the broadcast. You can see here they ask fans something as simple as, where are you watching from? Show your pride from home. On the other side, talking about universities, we've got a lot of big conferences who are about to kick off in the next few days here coming this weekend. UT has been an absolute, shining star when it comes to interactivity. Looking at this example here, they did a Gone to Texas pre-show to welcome their freshmen to the school with a UT grid made out of pictures from students at home. For those of us joining us on the media side, bringing an example here of really relevant coverage from recent coronavirus town halls that have been hosted by CNN. For those of you who listen to our Storyteller podcast, you may have heard the story behind this when we had them join us as a guest just a few weeks back. But this was, this broadcast, they're able to bring in questions and give answers from the experts. And, a great way to allow your viewers to actually talk in the broadcast. These are just a few of the examples. And today we're obviously bringing in a guest who's been through the trenches and done it all this summer. I know we have a lot of people joining this podcast who are about to kick off an NFL season, about to kick off college. And you probably are wondering what you would love to know before you kick that off. And that's why we've got a guest joining us today who can give you all the knowledge in advance.
Absolutely. And coming from the Premier Lacrosse League, if you're not familiar with the Premier Lacrosse League, you should be. They're in year 2. It's the best lacrosse players in the world right here on U.S. soil. And in year 2, they got thrown a curveball and they hit it out of the park. A 14-game championship series. It was played and produced in a bubble out in Utah. They played at the Real Salt Lake Stadium there in Salt Lake City. Broadcast numbers were huge, saw 33% increase from the first season. Let's bring in Tyler Steinhardt, the Director of Marketing for Premier Lacrosse League. Tyler, welcome to the webinar. Happy to have you on and excited to dive deep, man.
Thanks for having me. And seeing what the MLS and NHL are doing, it's probably more impressive than us. So it's pretty cool to see.
We got it all. We got it all out there. It was cool to see tip of the iceberg stuff, but here we go below the surface with you. Take us back to July when we're thinking through how you're going to pull off this bubble, both on the leading the social channel side, leading the Twitter account for Premier Lacrosse League, but you also dipped your toes a little bit on the broadcast side, working with NBC Sports. Just take us back to July, those early stages of planning when you're thinking to yourself, all right, we don't have fans in the stadium. How are we going to engage and interact with our fans? What were those first thoughts?
Yeah, we made the decision to go fanless and quarantined, I would say, in like late April, Sky. And so a lot of our planning from a content perspective was, how do you give like the feeling and the energy that it's an exciting game if there's no fans there, right? And so when we start kicking some of those ideas around, there were some big things like production side, having more cameras or more mics to sort of bring that to life a little bit more. And then on the social side, with how to bring the fan in experience, they feel like that they're there. And that was some of the stuff we sort of tested with Tagboard this summer that was very successful for us.
Awesome. And, for everyone at home, if we have an audio glitch or a video glitch, we're going to go ahead and preface that right off the bat that we're all doing this from home, just like you are. And so forgive us if you do see one of those glitches come in. But, Tyler, opening weekend, you guys had the second and third most watched professional lacrosse games in history. You were the mastermind behind the league's social content. Tell us a little bit about, what did you find that fans responded to the best? What were the tweets or the activations or the asks that knocked it out of the park for you guys?
Yeah, that's the only sort of media team for the work. I work very closely that helps sort of put some stuff into motion. And so, for us, we collectively were thinking about from the get go of how to create fun ways to get folks involved. So, for example, we mic up our players on the field. And like during action, our broadcast team will ask questions from Ryan Boyle to Paul Burmeister will ask questions to guys on the field. So one of the ideas that we tested this year was, hey, tweet a question, and you might have your question be asked to a player on the field or player timeout. And that was some of the fun sort of like interactivity that we had. It was sort of like a fun combination between sort of our production and marketing teams internally at PLL to come up with concepts like that.
Yeah, Tyler, I love the mic'd up stuff that you're talking about there, where it's how can we make our audience feel a part of the action, a part of the game? What better way than to say, hey, you can ask a player a question while they're playing the game itself. I mean, I think that's as close to the action as anyone could imagine they could get. So I remember talking with you through that early on of just what that would take to pull together. And I think the payoff on it is like, I mean, that's a fan for life. If they feel like they got to ask a player specific question during a game, that's next level. The other part of it is you're growing a brand here, right? You're growing the Premier Lacrosse League, you're growing the league. You have an audience as big as you've ever had, and so you're like, how can we bring in different people who we know are lacrosse fans to help grow that as well? One of the clips that I really loved early on was the Big Cat clip from Part of My Take and Barstool, and the gloves. Take us through this activation a little bit, where we had the Part of My Take gloves.
Yeah, so the Water Dogs, our 17 that we expanded to for PLL, was named by Part of My Take. And so that happened, I would say, January 1st, we announced the team. And so one of the players, Drew Snyder, got custom painted gloves over the course of the spring and sort of brought them as a surprise. And so we sort of found out that they sort of existed. He snapped a picture, tweeted out. Part of My Take sort of took level. We were able to sort of like on that day be able to bring that tweet into sort of conversation ahead of big MT Part of My Take team running the broadcast, which is pretty cool to see. And that was sort of like from end to end how it sort of came to fruition.
Awesome. I love that. I think being able to bring it full circle, not only have the gloves, show them on the broadcast, have that full connection is incredible. I think, one thing that I loved that you guys did on social was as simple as hosting a Twitter tailgate. You guys put that hashtag out there, Twitter tailgate, and encourage people to tell you where you're watching from, show us what you're doing. What was kind of the response that you saw from fans at home when you did give them CTAs that were pretty specific like that?
I mean, the PLL audience and the fan base is really active and engaged. And it's sort of the fun thing working for the company and for the league is we sort of say, hey, snap a picture of your TV or what's your setup. People engage. And they often do so because we retweet, we sort of share it in the broadcast. I think we were able to get, a couple thousand tweets over the course of the tournament, on TV. And so I think it creates a really sort of collective atmosphere of everyone watching together, which makes it a lot more enjoyable. That's probably the toughest thing that we're missing without live sports is that the feeling of big moments or sort of the shared collective energy of watching. And so when we sort of do something like the Twitter tailgates or the PLL watch party that we did with us, it really brings it together of everyone sort of collectively coming together, enjoying, talking, and sort of watching PLL at the same time.
Tyler, what was some of the reaction, I guess, from, you mentioned I think it's such a big part of people just want to feel together when we can't go to the stadium or the arena. That was such a big part of, as a sports fan, as a fan of a league, as a fan of a team, being together with that fan base is the infectious part of being a sports fan. What was some of the reaction that you saw from people? Did you feel like it was successful in like bringing the lacrosse community together, to building the Water Dogs community virtually? Like, did you feel like it was pretty successful? What kind of feedback did you get?
It's what makes lacrosse so special as a sport. People want the game to grow, and so they're sort of collectively sort of rallying behind the sport at large, trying to take it to the next level. And so when we do things like that, it's so special to be a part of because our fan base and sort of the players of the game, parents of the game, help sort of amplify things, bring folks involved. So I think that makes it really particularly intriguing for us to do because the lacrosse community is so unique in that way.
Totally, totally. And, on the flip side, I know we always love to talk about the amazing pieces and what went really well. At the same time, I'm sure it wasn't easy at all. And I'm sure there were a host of challenges or things that may have been part of the greater plan that didn't come to fruition. What were the biggest challenges, especially knowing that we've got folks joining here who are about to do what you did this summer? What are the biggest challenges that they need to be prepared for?
I would say a challenge for us is just the speed at which things happen, especially when it's in game, but being relevant. And so if you're bringing in a tweet or a question of a player who's performing really well, for how lacrosse works, especially the PLL, so many goals happen so quickly that sometimes when we're asking a question about a high performer like a Matt Rambo, who's been our MVP and an all world and all tournament team, and then 2 goals later, it's another team that's scoring, it makes it stale. And so I think for how we sort of approach it is we sort of have 2 or 3 things in the fire going on at once. And as those sort of happen, we sort of pull in what's relevant at the time for the TV team. And that's really all Matt Borzello, NBC Sports, handling that. On our side, we have someone, Michael Siegel, who helps oversee all of our production level. And we have so much going on from our side. The speed of the game sometimes becomes a challenge on this front, especially creative interactive programming and social programming in general. Goal and when that goal happens. So I think it covers the feeling.
Awesome, awesome. And again, technology, guys, if you hear some audio glitches, video glitches, stay with us. We're all coming back. I agree with you. I think everything moves at lightning speed. And, even just watching a Twitter feed, it's nonstop. It's there and then it's gone. Was there anything that you guys had planned or a vision that didn't happen that maybe you look to in the future, or maybe an idea or a secret sauce that you could share with folks that didn't happen for you but you'd love to see it?
Yeah, I guess like some of the concepts that came with early on that we liked, polling, potentially having fans choose what someone jersey wear, whatever it may be, concepts or the PL one thing sort of launched that player or also fan focused too. And so we tend to do things that people aren't seeing in traditional sports, like putting cameras in the middle of huddles and showing that kind of experience. And so we were pushing the envelope to begin with. But for us, trying to sort of like let fans have more ownership of what jersey might be worn or who should might cut the next game, we did 1 or 2 things, but not the extent that we had sort of originally come up with. And part of that was just A, dealing with COVID, and B, the speed at which we had a 2-week tournament with 20 games in 16 days. Things happened really fast. So that's probably something I would go back on. And then honestly, looking at some of the ideas that you had showed the start of the show with the MLS, NHL, it was sparking new ideas for myself for 2021. So probably a few things there too to learn from.
I love the meaningful engagement side of it, the interactive polling that I know, Tyler, we work through, and we got the Zed Williams for MVP out there and talk about people doing well. But then you talk about other things that you can add to that down the road, as far as picking who's mic'd up for the next game or what jersey is going to be worn. And that meaningful engagement can be so powerful and not just be trivial to where it's like, hey, interact with us, but like we actually want our fans to decide where this is going. It's like a Goosebumps novel, like pick your path. So the meaningful engagement is such a important part of the puzzle. One part that I really love that I thought you guys pulled off well, we keep going back to the water dogs, but you mentioned the people wanting to feel together and the water dogs watch party. Take me through it, man. I loved the water dogs watch party.
I think this is probably one of the most fun teams to work with because it's so fresh and new. Just for those who don't know, we named our 17 the Water Dogs in partnership, part of my take. And so when they first played on TV, I believe this game is the 26th, their opener game. We just sort of like put out a tweet from the water, who's sort of watching, what dogs are watching. And all dogs are water dogs, by the way, if you're wondering what is a water dog. Every dog's water dog. And so it leads to like a flood of people sending in pictures of their pups, which I think is like the best social media ever. And that really brought that game, to a lot of new eyeballs, because I think that's the second most watched pro lacrosse game ever. That came in 26. And so doing sort of like fun things like that for someone to see their dog on TV makes
I mean, at the end of the day, everyone loves their dog, right? And dog stuff performs well every single time. Not to mention when you can tie it in with a name like that, which is so fun. Definitely was a big talker in the Tagboard office for sure. For those joining us who are about to do what you've done, what would be the biggest piece of advice that you would share that maybe you wish that somebody had shared with you before the tournament started in July? What do you wish you'd known that you can offer for folks who are about to embark on doing what you guys masterfully did?
Probably what we're doing today, right? There's technical issues and there's challenges that you can't sort of account for. And that sometimes being stoic in nature and not getting too low or too high at any time is really important. We had some crazy things happen during our championship series. At one point, a fuse melted underground and the entire facility lost power. And so we were delayed an hour, hour and a half. There was awful, awful windstorms that knocked down these huge 1,000-pound trusts that we had with netting. At one point, there was like a triple overtime hockey game that sort of pushed back our TV window. And so I think that the patience, especially in today's age when you're short staffed or because of COVID or social distancing issues, I think that's really important because I found that when you get upset around those issues of what's going on, it's actually fluster your mind for a little while. And that you probably lost on bigger opportunities. You're so focused in on what happened wrong or what's happening against you versus what you can make out of it. And so I'm sure I've lost internet like 5 times in the last 20 minutes. It brings me back to that because it's really easy to sort of get frustrated with that kind of stuff, and that can affect other work. And so that'd be my one recommendation for everyone going in and kind of working in this like new age of society is just to take an extra beat or two and be a little more patient.
Patience, empathy, that's what 2020 is all about, whether it be on the production side or outside the production side. And I think that we always call it making sausage in the broadcast world, where oftentimes the viewers don't realize that something just almost took out the TV truck, or fuses are burning underground, and there's so much that goes in to behind the scenes, and pulling off a bubble experience like you guys did with the Premier Lacrosse League. I can only imagine how much stuff went in behind the scenes to pull that off so successfully. What you can, I guess, from what you can reveal, how were the engagement numbers on your social channels? And if you're still with me, if you're listening to me, Tyler, let me know. How was the overall engagement on your social channels, Twitter account, all your different accounts versus season one? Did you feel like it was successful and good engagement from that standpoint?
Yeah, I think on social we found fine. You can hear me, right, Sky?
Yep, I got you.
Perfect. Timely comeback on the internet. Yeah, I think social was great. I mean, like if you look at our numbers pound for pound, I think we far outkick our coverage, and compared to other leagues too, we performed pretty well. I know that there was like some numbers all floating around that we were having the same amount of likes or comments per post like an MLS was doing, for example, or more than NASCAR. And so like those are things that are really big benchmarks for us because we're much 2 million people play lacrosse and there's 2 billion people play soccer. And for us to be able to compete in a league like that, it's been around for 20, 25 years, it does incredible work, is really important for us. And that's kind of how we sort of compare ourselves. And I think the most important number for us was the amount of COVID tests. And we didn't have a single positive test the entire 3 weeks that we were there. It was completely efficient bubble. And so that's like a real hat tip to our medical team and Dr. Logan and Rob Sanzillo and this huge crew of people on the ops side who made that possible, because we can tweet all we want, but if we can't have an actual bubble, none of that really matters. And so that was probably the most important metric of all.
I mean, absolutely. That's amazing. And the hat tip to the medical teams who are making these bubble leagues possible. And I can't imagine the coordination and just operations involved to make these things happen. And I know we all miss sports at home, and being able to have leagues like yours relaunch has been such a bright spot in at least my living room. Looking ahead to the future, obviously, I'm sure the hope is that next year we've got fans back in the stadium, and we can see that light at the tunnel, the reemergence of what it was like to have fans there in person. But was there anything this season, tactics that you guys started, or things that you may have changed without the fans that you'll carry over into next season, even when fans come back?
Oh, that's a great question. Um, Yeah, there definitely are a few things that we have to keep. I think like some of this programming stuff that we did, and I'm not just sort of guessing it because we're talking together, but that we'd sort of done with Tagboard here, we would definitely expand upon in 2021. Part of the challenge was is that we sort of onboarded and we were working together for 4 to 6 weeks, and so it happened so fast. I think that there's more opportunity to bring fans into programming than we thought. Potentially having fans record video intros or surprises for players, things like that. That was really cool. And then in general, from a content side, when we're sort of thinking about how to create content at the time, we overthought, I think, in the past in my life about the time of the day and what's going on. And with COVID, we just sort of pushing out content whenever we had it. And I think that's something we'll probably carry on in the future too. That fans are always ravenous for more and getting more access, and so that's probably what will also is like a larger takeaway too of just be a little bit more engaging on that element.
That access is such a big part too of growing a brand, and I part of giving that access is the players, the coaches being willing to give it to you, and excuse me, it feels like you have that buy-in. I mean, obviously, when the league is co-founded by one of the players in the league and Paul Rabel, like obviously they get it. But take us through how important that is, and just maybe some little things that you found that your players are willing to do that's really helped out on building that social following, engaging with your fans.
I mean, our players are the best. I mean, I really don't think that you can find a league where the players are more active or more courteous in sports. And I mean that. I mean, we talk to our players every single day. We work with them. They're sort of part of the business. I think we're the only major team sport where players have stock options in the league as well, and so that makes it a huge difference. Of hey, here's how we're going to create content around it or get folks involved in a really special way. I know like there was one moment that comes to mind in particular. We had a player, Josh Byrne, who had a really star goal that was number one on Sports Center top 10. And to see the reactions that people had to his goal were really cool. And then sort of how he brought it back afterwards, sort of talking about it or laughing about it or engaging with folks was really special. So I think that like the access our players have, but also the openness and willingness to share that our players have in turn to fans makes it sort of expand upon itself because it's not just like one way; it's two ways going back and forth constantly.
I mean, so true, right? You've got to have the buy-in from the players who are willing to give you that window into their lives. So that's certainly incredible on that end. I know we only have a few minutes left here and want to be cognizant of everyone joining us with their busy time. If you do have a question for Tyler, just mention it on Twitter at Tagboard, or if you're watching on YouTube, drop it in the comments. I know we had a question that we already addressed earlier. So if you have a question, now's your last chance to pop it in. But Tyler, for those who have watched our Storyteller podcast, we always end it with tell us a story. And I'm sure that among the course of producing the, throughout the championship series, you had a fair share of amazing stories of things that happened behind the scenes. You mentioned a few of them with the power outage or the trucks knocked over or whatnot. Leave us with one of the best stories from the experience and, give us a little window inside of what it was like.
I think probably the best story I think was we all quarantined when we first arrived. So we took a number of tests while we were there, and so when we first got there, so we got on the bus, you took a quarantine test, sort of waited at a hotel until your results back, and there was this sort of waiting for their result. That was kind of funny because you're all in this hotel together. There's 400 people, 300 people between players, staff, coaches, who are sort of waiting around, and everyone is seeing what everyone else is doing on Instagram stories. And so I think when I look back at that time, it felt like quarantine was forever when it was really just 30 hours maybe. But those sort of funny bits, and to sort of like wrap with that, at one point during the quarantine, the fire alarm did go off, and so if you can imagine, you're told not to leave at all, or you'll be booted out of the bubble into it. But also the fire alarm's going off, and so like you have like these like two really competing instincts of I need to get out of here. There could be a fire, but also I am told not to leave my room because there's a deadly pandemic we're all being tested for. And so when that had sort of gone off, everyone pulled their heads out the door and kind of figure out what's going on, what to do. And sort of like laugh everybody because everyone's weighing that. So My one story is for share. Like really, when I look on it, thank God we have such a good medical team for that kind of stuff because we were so prepared, so communicative that I made sure it was a success. So that's my one story there.
A big psychology experiment is what that was. You didn't know you were part of it, but you
Yeah,
passed.
that's what it was. I appreciate that.
Takes a
Cool.
village behind the scenes. I am sure of it that you have amazing memories from the championship series. The work you guys did was incredible. We loved watching it from the Tagboard side, and the entire Tagboard team was so impressed by how you guys continue to innovate and push the limits of how you can connect with fans, and certainly a lot of lessons that I think everyone is going to be able to learn from and take pieces of and copy a little bit of your secret sauce. So Tyler, thank you so much for joining us here today and giving us a little insight into how it all went down.
Thanks for having me, and shout out to Sky and Alex who were incredible support for PLL. I think there were a few times we called them late at night, around 10 or 11 p.m. and needed some help, so I appreciate that as well.
Hey, you bet. I'm just waiting for my water dog's penny to show up in the mail.
It's out there. We sent it.
Wrong address.
Yeah.
I moved.
Awesome. For everyone joining us live on Twitter or YouTube, thank you so much for taking the time to spend 30 minutes lunching and learning with Tagboard and the Premier Lacrosse League. If you have questions, if you are a current Tagboard client, you know who to hit up. You know, you've got a dedicated team within Tagboard. If you want to bring any of the ideas you've seen here to life, let's do it. If you're brand new to Tagboard, shoot us an email, marketing@tagboard.com. We'd love to bring some of these ideas and activations to life for you so that you can get started. But with that, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll look to talk to you soon.